we'd want to look at your balance sheet, and just your balance sheet, just as a reminder, is looking at like, what do you own? What are your assets? And then the other question is, what do you owe? Like, do you have any loans out, and who do
Mhm.
you owe? And we'd want to look at what percentage rates do you owe people. And so, there's kind of plenty of people talk before about good debt, bad debt. Like
Mhm.
the thing that I think everyone will agree is probably good debt is like your long-term primary mortgage is
Mhm.
usually considered good debt. Could be on an investment property as well if it's cash flowing properly for you.
Mhm.
Um, Beyond that, and then of course maybe a car loan or some student loans, but the
Mhm.
question becomes like, well, what interest rates are you paying on those things?
Yep.
Because if you're paying a high interest rate of, like right now, you could be paying 7, 8, 9%, or credit cards you could be paying
Way
in the
higher.
teens.
Yeah.
um, Probably want to pay those down pretty quickly, because interest is one of those things where if you are the owner of something and you get to receive the interest, it's lovely. But if you are,
Yay, money.
if you're the borrower, and especially the borrower at higher interest rates, it really cuts into your financial future.
Yeah, and I think that one of the questions is always, well, how high of an interest rate warrants paying it off? And it's not like there's calculus behind this where we can say, well, exactly 8.2% interest rate and above, you should pay it off. But certainly one of the things I like to compare it to is, well, that is a guaranteed cost to you, whatever the interest rate is.
Yes.
8% interest rate means you're guaranteed to have to pay 8%. Is there any investment in the world that is a guaranteed 8% rate of return? Because if you invest the money instead of paying it off, that's what you're saying. You're betting you can get more than 8% in investment return. So that's a
Exactly.
sort of a mental rubric I use to figure out what interest rate above which I want to pay off debt instead of possibly invest the money.
Yeah, we're on a similar page there, and I think where it can go from ought to want to is
Mhm.
some people also just have an aversion to debt.
Oh,
They
yeah.
just, for whatever there's the emotional side, not just the finance side, because the
Mhm.
finance side you described so lovely, right? Especially like if you have like the mortgage on our house, I think it's like 2.675 or something like
Mhm.
that. It's like we're never in a rush to pay that down
Yeah.
fast, because we can just, the opportunity cost of what we can do with that extra money, it just goes to other places and makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. But some people are just like, I can't stomach having any debt and I don't want to have any. Well,
Yep.
there's a freedom that comes from not having debt as well. So that could be something that they look to accelerate for that reason, but probably in the context of the overall plan and understanding what the trade off is by doing that.
Yeah. Right. So that paying off debt with this pile of cash sort of has a foot in both the ought to and want to
Totally.
world.
Yeah, but the want to is probably more so emotional if it's on the lower end of the interest rates.
Yeah.
On the higher end of the interest rates, it's probably like,
It's
yeah, it probably just
ought
makes
to.
sense to go pay that off so you don't have that on your plate anymore.
Yes. As
Um,
long as you have an emergency fund.
Totally, which is another ought to. Like, do
Hmm.
you have one? And we can do an episode on emergency funds again in the future just to get your own take on it. But
Hmm.
typically we want to look at things like, well, how likely are you to go from one job to the next without having a lot of time? Are you a single earner in the family, or are there
Hmm.
two earners in the family? If there are two earners in the family, do you earn 80% or 50%? Right.
Right.
So like there's so many factors that go into how much cash do you want to leave as cash to make sure you guys feel safe. But yeah, do you have one, and is it full? Those are the two main questions
Right.
to look at there.
Yeah. And I think, again, talking about the ought to versus want to, there's some minimum amount of emergency fund, which is an ought to. And we can
Hmm.
quibble about how much that is, 3, 6 months, depending on your personal circumstances. But I know a lot of people go beyond the ought to into the want to. I want an
Hmm.
entire year of sort of
Hmm.
unreduced personal expenses because I sleep better at night.
Yeah, we have I know a few clients who are that way. And then there's others who are just like, they could literally have like zero and they would be totally fine.
Yeah.
Um,
Those
and
clients
I'm
make
and
me
I'm like,
nervous.
no, no, no. Let's have something. Let's just
Yes.
just
Yeah.
just like 2 months, okay?
Yeah.
Like just know that there's some cash there in case, so I can sleep at night for you too.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. I think another thing that could go in ought to would be, and it's pretty rare, I think, for most of our clients, but it is something that we'll run into every now and again, is just retirement savings.
Hmm.
And like, are you doing flipping the proper switches in your retirement savings? Because usually that cash is coming from bonuses or stock comp that they're selling. And it's just looking at, like, are we optimizing cash flow and retirement savings for taxes as well as for retirement?